call this meeting to order. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jim. So it's 7:01. Cheryl, are you taking notes for us?
You're mute, Cheryl.
You can tell by my hurried looks back and forth. Yes, I'm on the minutes.
Thank you. That's very kind. Appreciate it. All right. So folks, Beth is juggling some family stuff. So there's a request that we get right to the charge. So we'll do that after we vote on approving the minutes from August 18th. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the minutes from August 18th.
I second.
Great.
Oh,
Jim,
yep.
Cheryl, do you agree?
Oh, yep. Yes.
Very good. Thank you. Also, for the avoidance of doubt, I am now the host of this meeting, the co-host, along with Chris Carmody, who's also on the line. So if we have any trouble like we did last time, I personally have the power to remove anybody who's not doing the right things.
Thank you.
So let's get right to the charge if we could. Mary, could you give us a quick walkthrough of the charge?
Sure. Yeah.
And what's it for? I haven't gone into all that, the task force versus the committee, et cetera.
I'm sorry, say that again.
And what is the task force versus the existing White Pond Advisory Committee?
Okay. Let me start with the background of how this came about. If you remember, I think back in May, the select board agreed that it was time to rewrite the charge because the White Pond beach had been taken over by the Rec Commission. And also it was a good time to reset the relationship between White Pond Advisory Committee and the town staff. So with that in mind, I was tasked with going out and collecting a lot of information. So I spoke with I'd say I spoke with over a dozen people. And I don't mean just speak with them, I mean in-depth conversations with people that included prior White Pond Advisory Committee members, prior select board members, people who lived in the White Pond watershed, people who lived in other watersheds within the town. Who else can I think? Town staff, other select board members, other interested people. And so after all of those conversations, I put together a draft that I put in front of two other people. So there are two other people that have seen this besides you. And one of those is Matt Johnson, who's the chair of the select board. So I took his input, and also Carrie LaFleur, who's the town manager. So I took their input and what I had heard from the people that I had spoken to, and I came up with a task force. And the task force is different than the committee in that the task force is time bound. It's focused on a specific task as opposed to an ongoing relationship or ongoing tasks or ongoing work. So I'll stop there.
Okay. So Mary, it's my understanding that the task force supersedes the White Pond Advisory Committee, that this committee is suspended. And that,
yes.
Great. So this is our last meeting.
As the unless you decide that you want to reconstitute the White Pond Advisory Committee, yes.
Okay. So the charge has been shared with the White Pond Advisory Committee members. Folks, to my read, it looks a lot like what we did last year for the White Pond Vision. It looks to be a little bit more technical, is my understanding, which we attempted to do. And actually, I found the White Pond Vision last year to be pretty technical as well. Does anyone have any questions about the charge for Mary? Beth?
Well,
Beth, go ahead. You're on
Beth,
mute.
You're muted, Beth.
Muted.
That's because I have a lot of noise in the background. Sorry about that. So Mary, I think my understanding was that you were going to make the draft of the charge, which you've done. So I thought what we were looking at was going to be and discuss this draft. I didn't know that it would be gold as, you know, as written already. I thought we were going to have some give and take with the WPAC and talk about, yes, we agree, or yes, but slightly modify, etc. Was my assumption incorrect?
Well, traditionally, charges are written by the select board. The prior amended White Pond Advisory Committee charge was written by the White Pond Advisory Committee. I don't think that worked out very well. So traditionally, charges are written by the select board. Having said that, I'm open to minor modifications, but the charge is really the responsibility of the select board. That's our job.
And so these task force, I don't know if there's others in town, you know much better than I. Do they have the same kind of requirement that we'll meet on a, regular basis and that we will report to the select board? Will we go to the chair meetings, et cetera, et cetera? How is it different?
It's different in that it's not a committee, and it is really a task force that's focused on the task that's written in the charge. Okay, if you want to go to the chairs committees, that's fine, to give an update on the work relative to the task force.
Okay, but we still do minutes, we still do all that stuff.
Exactly. You're
Okay.
still under open meeting law and all of those requirements. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Jim,
Mary, I didn't understand what you said. This would be the last meeting unless we want to reconstitute the board. I don't understand that.
Well, the thing is that this particular charge is again setting up a task force, and the deliverable of the task force is a set of recommendations to the select board no later than December of 2023. And in those recommendations, you might recommend that the White Pond Advisory Committee be restarted with a new look and a feel, maybe fewer members, maybe a different mix of members. And that's really something for you to explore.
Except we won't be in operation during that period of time.
The task force will.
Yes.
The task force will, right. And so,
Right.
so if you want to stay involved, then the task force is the mechanism to do that.
Gotcha.
I'm just wondering why did this happen? What's the reason for bringing this about?
Well, I'm sorry you weren't here at the beginning, but way back in May, the select board agreed that we would rewrite the charge for the White Pond Advisory Committee because of two things. Number one, the takeover of the beach by the Recreation Commission. So that was a big change for White Pond. And also to reset the relationship between the White Pond Advisory Committee and the town, to reinstill, I think, some trust and a more effective working relationship.
all right, any other questions? Mary on the charge? Okay, I'm gonna like to be on record here. I don't approve of how this was done. I don't care for how this was done. I find the charge actually to be a setback for the interests of White Pond. I won't be participating. Needless to say, I'll be resigning at the end of this meeting. So I just want to have that for the record.
What would you have preferred?
Well, first of all,
For my curiosity.
what you wrote, there are two things in particular. First of all, I think a lot of the charge actually does literally duplicate what we did for the White Pond Vision last year. I don't think you're going to find a lot that's new. Second of all, I think it's unrealistic to find the people that you think you're going to find. Maybe you'll surprise us greatly. I mean, I'll certainly attend a meeting or two and see what's going on, but it just doesn't seem realistic that you're going to be finding a limnologist and a lawyer who will volunteer their time to do this. Goodness knows we've tried to find people to volunteer, and we've made some great contacts, and there are definitely people who have been great advisors from time to time, but nobody who's been willing to step up and be part of a task force.
So you don't think it can be done?
I don't think it can be done, and I think it wastes a year that White Pond doesn't really have. Further, it takes away one avenue, not the only avenue, but one avenue of communicating with the town about critical matters, and a lever for important things like getting the funding for the APOD, which I think is a crowning achievement of this committee, and Beth in particular.
I'm sorry, it takes that away?
Well, there will no longer be a committee that says, hey, there's no funding for the APOD in the budget, and that seems to be the only thing that's made a difference in the short term. So there will be nobody to say that.
You can certainly say that. You're still a resident of the town.
Well, I'm just curious, how do we betray the trust of the select board? I'm just curious how this where this attitude came from.
I I don't think I have to explain that to you. I think you were there.
Yeah. We know, Jeff.
What do you mean?
Well,
No, I'm curious.
I'm not going to go there.
yeah, Jeff, we'll need to take that offline. So it looks to me.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So it looks to me, folks, that the avenue for community input from our side at this point will be Friends of White Pond. I will see everyone there who's interested, and my next port of call will be talking with the folks who have the website to actually get that to be more user-friendly, interactive with the community, and be building up a network and a mailing list for Friends of White Pond. Katie has left the neighborhood. She's moved. And Friends of White Pond right now doesn't have a strong organization, has many interested parties, but no one who's really taken the reins and said, okay, here's our direction going forward. I don't think I will be the person, but I'll see if I can be a person to contribute on that.
No, wait a minute. Actually, okay, that's great. I'm just a little. Are you saying something about when you guys listened to my private phone conversation that you were upset about what you heard? Is that what you're saying?
Jeff, I think that there's multiple things. Mary, if you don't mind, I'll step in.
Please.
I think going back to our vote last summer, where
Oh, yeah, that was, yeah, you're right. Okay, yeah.
so there's a number of points of friction, and
I think we had a lot to be proud of. I mean, if
do.
we hadn't been involved with the beach, they were going to shave that hillside. They were going to clear cut it. It is only because we, at least, we pissed and moaned and fought those guys in all those meetings that they did not clear cut that hillside.
Yeah.
I just want to interrupt here and say that I think that you've done a lot of really good work. And I think that for example, the APOD, and I think the testing got started because a lot of what you've done. And I think that as far as the 48Y subdivision or PRD that's happening, I think you moved the needle a little bit on that. I think you've done some really good work. And Josh, if you want to go and work with the Friends of whatever, I think that's great. And I hope that you do really good work, and I think you will because you care. This is the charge. This is the select board's job to write a charge. This is based not on my capricious, just what I thought of, but what I heard from many different people. And what I'm trying to solve here is I'm trying to solve the fact that I think that often when we go to do things, we don't know who's responsible for what. Is it the state owns the pond, or is it the abutters that do that? So we do a lot of that. And I'm hoping that the task force will really look at, number one, what is a prioritized list? Not are we all over the place? Fish, APOD, people. Let's prioritize. What are the most important things? Who's responsible for what? And then make those recommendations so that maybe something can happen. That's what I outlined in this particular document. And also I should back up and say, by getting input from both the people in the White Pond watershed and the town. And we've got mechanisms, we've got ways to do that. We've got online surveys that the town can do. We've got hearings that you can have. We've got forums that you can do that can actually solicit and get input from people so that you can develop, again, a prioritized list, because this is what I heard. So I'll tell you, this is what I hear. I hear we get a lot of good ideas, but we don't know which to do first or which is the most important. So I think a prioritized list would go a long way, and then finding out who's responsible for what, and then figuring out, okay, now that we have that, what's the role of White Pond going forward? And I'll stop there. So that's what I tried to capture with the with what I heard, and this is what I captured based on conversations with the people who helped me craft this. And so I'll stop.
Well, I think Josh and Beth did a great job of doing that exact thing. They prioritized, we had groups. I just don't understand this. This is bizarre.
Jeff, I'm going to ask for everybody if we could raise hands. Beth, I'm going to recognize you in just one sec. I'd just like to add also that Mary is fully within her rights, as is the select board here. We are in effect the consultant to these folks. And if they are the client, and so if they want to have a different kind of consultancy, that is entirely their prerogative. So, and then we can choose to participate in that or not, and
Right, exactly,
do in response.
exactly.
Beth, your hand is raised, please.
Hi, so, yeah, Jeff, thank you for saying, you know, thanks, but we worked really hard and really hard. And we did get a lot of things done. I mean, we know that the APOD and the water quality testing would not be done. We got this letter writing campaign. You've got the petition going. We will approve or disapprove a letter we want to send to the zoning board with our drafted letter about the 48Y. I think, Mary, to Josh's point earlier, when we wrote the vision, which was comprehensive, we did try to prioritize, and we formed mini task groups. We couldn't call them that. We couldn't call them committees. We had to call them acting groups because, you know, open town meeting laws, etc. And so everybody, a lot of people were involved, and people who aren't on our committee in these, like I, for instance, was on the water quality task group, and it was myself, Katie Blair, Suzanne Langbridge. And, you know, we met with the town multiple times together and the limnologists to get things going. Jeff and Jim, for example, met with sewer and septic. And, you know, we did prioritize, but septic and sewer is such a huge issue. We know it's the #1 issue and culprit. And it's just something that's not going to happen overnight. And I think the task force is going to find that same thing, right? So I don't think we'll be much different than a task force on that point, for example. So we absolutely did try to stack rank and Pareto, and we don't know by a percentage what impacted anything, but we knew, as we talked about, rainbow trout might have had an impact. So let's do what we can. And the select board, with our ghosting the letter, you know, sent these letters to Fish and Game. So I think we did prioritize, and we tried to do that. And I just want to, you know, state that, because that's really what our main focus was, protecting the pond. And that's all. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right. Any other specific questions for Mary about the charge? And then I think we're pretty much wrapped up here. There's nothing else that's going to happen. We do have a little bit of other business, I think, that's important that we get to this evening. Jim, you'd like to say?
Yeah, I just was thinking, it's been, my guess, roughly 50 years that this committee's been in existence. And I hate to kind of see it go out without acknowledging some of the work that's been done over the years. Mary pointed out a couple of things, but I was on it back in the late 70s, and then it was a whole other set of issues, like trying to get the town to understand some of the craziness on weekends and stuff. But always, the various groups that I'm familiar with have always had one thing in common, and that was try to do the best thing we can for the pond. And people have different ideas, obviously, of what that means. So I thought it would be interesting to try to put together just call it a brief history of the White Pond Advisory Committee. Not to, you know, pat everybody on the back or anything like that, but just to, you know, it's an interesting group of people who have worked on this over the years, and a lot of things have been accomplished. One, you know, way back was town had a lot of empty lots, and this recommendation was sell them to an abutter and make it one parcel. And then you've taken, you know, you've got it in the hands, it becomes a tax paying piece of property, and it can't be developed further around the pond and things like that. So then we've had periods, I think, where not much has happened, but I don't know how y'all feel about that, if you think it'd be worth the effort.
I won't be there myself. I'm sorry, I'm getting a lot of texts. Would anyone else like to add there?
Mary, it's Beth. Just a question. So the task force will be by appointment. Will you be the appointer? The select board as a whole be the appointer? And during these conversations with like the 12 or whatever people you talked to, did you get anybody in the fields who might be interested?
I think it's going to be hard to, I've talked to a lot of people, and it's hard to get people on committees, period. Okay, we've got a long list of committees that in town that are missing members. So I'm going to have to cast a wider net than I've done. The other thing that I've talked with the town manager about is if we're missing some expertise, we might be able to get some of that, you know, hire someone to give us that that level of expertise, but it's gonna be hard. I'm not gonna,
Mary, do they have to be residents of Concord to be on our task force?
to be a seated member, yes.
Okay. And
Yes.
is it, okay, thank you.
Yeah, to be an ongoing member, yeah. But if you have a specific task that you want them to do, I'm using the word task too much, but if you have, a statement of work for them, then that's something that we could bring to the town manager and see if she would support that.
Okay, like a fish biologist, for example.
Yes,
Okay.
but no, we'd have to have what we want them to do for us.
Yeah, no, I get it. Totally. Thank you.
Got it, good.
Cheryl, your hand is up.
Yeah, Mary, if you are going to go out and hire people, I think it'd be really useful to hire specific people with specific backgrounds. I think hiring somebody like in the past, I think the last big research that was done on White Pond specifically stated that they didn't think septic systems had much of an impact, which we've discovered is absolutely not the case, and which the town actually talked about, whatever, 20 years ago, or whatever it was when they first did that look into septic systems or sewage systems for this part of this area. So if you're looking to hire people, I recommend that you hire people with specific, not an organization that's going to do any reviews, but specific people, a linologist or a whatever. That's my recommendation, because I think that's where you're going to get your best bang for your buck.
Oh, wait, so let me make sure I understand what you're saying, Cheryl. So don't go out and hire a firm that's going to do a report. Is that kind of what you're saying? But hire
Yes.
a person?
Yes, that's
Okay,
my recommendation. Because if
okay.
you look at the last report,
Yep, yeah, I
there
did,
was
I did.
tons of
Yep.
money, and I came up with conclusions that were very different from a lot of other experts.
Yeah, I would second that. I think Cheryl's right. I mean, I read that report. That was a D minus. I don't know what they charge for that, but those people were not experts.
Okay,
Yeah, I get that idea too, because, if you think back to the work that Bill Walker as an individual has done with his credentials, much of what we're dealing with now, I had no idea what he was talking about, but, evaluating water columns and saying, I'm finding this at 20 feet and 15 feet. And it was kind of like an early warning, if you will, of we need to take some action. So I think an individual makes a lot more sense than a company, getting the right individual.
mhm.
I agree with that.
I'd like to get back and respect Jim's earlier comment about creating a history of the White Pond Advisory Committee. Does anyone present want to work with Jim on that? You want to raise your hands and you guys can connect later?
What was his
To
Oh,
create a
history?
history of the White Pond Advisory Committee.
Yeah, because whatever happens, it's not gonna be the same format, or it's not gonna have the same charter and that kind of thing. So, put it to bed with a kind of a chronological order of what's been done over the years might have some value. I'll take a stab at it. See
All
what I
right.
can find out.
Thank you, Jim. Okay,
So
so
I'm sorry, can I just finish? You
Sure.
want to wrap this up, Josh, right?
yeah, I'd like to move past the charge. I think we're
Okay,
about.
the charge will be reviewed by the select board this Monday night. I'm expecting that it will be approved. And then after that, I will start to look for members. So if anybody here would like to participate, I'd be more than willing to entertain that idea. So that's the process.
All right, very good. Last call for comments or questions on the charge, and then we're going to move forward. Nope, okey doke. All right, so getting back to our agenda, the next item is, as you all know, we've had some back and forth from the White Pond Advisory Committee with the developer of the 48Y Fitchburg Turnpike development. For newcomers, this is 6 units in the town of Concord that the people who built up the 274 units on Route 117 in Sudbury want to now build over the Concord line. A core issue, there are quite a number of issues. So one that only the White Pond Advisory Committee has been dealing with is water quality. So I'd like to just stick with that topic, please. Other folks on this committee are working with neighborhoods and doing some really great work actually on the height of the buildings and natural habitat. White Pond Advisory Committee has only been focused on wastewater. there seems to be, we wrote a letter that I think you all know well now that said, hey, it's a terrible idea. It's in the watershed. The developer's lawyer wrote back and said, and I'm going to paraphrase, "Nya, nya, nya, no, it's not."
Yeah, right.
Beth has then drafted a letter that's been circulated as a reply to the developer. That letter has been shared with Delia Kay, who came back with some comments that I don't know, Beth, if you want to comment on those comments or not. But what we really need to vote on is, as White Pond Advisory Committee in one of our final acts, do we want to approve Beth's letter to send to the Natural Resource Committee and to the Zoning Board of Appeals in response to the developer's lawyer's letter? Discussion, yeah, Beth?
Yes, I did receive a reply from Jeff. Thank you, Jeff, that he was good with the letter. Just for everybody's edification, Delia did write back, which we do know that it does. Title V is, Title V, and what he's projecting is it will meet Title V requirements. Excuse me. But we know that septic is not a good option. We saw that the new school is going to have a septic nitrogen phosphate reducing septic system. And why wouldn't we want to ask for that? Excuse me, Josh, you're going to have to speak for me. But
sure. Sorry,
why
Beth.
wouldn't we ask for that, or ask them to tie into the Coldbrook quarry across the street? So there's nothing, in my opinion, wrong with asking, because further down the line, as Mary's indicated, if we have a task force and in 10 years we say everybody's going to have to update their septic systems, why not do it now? Save some money. So that's kind of what the letter was about.
Yep.
I thought it was a great letter. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Jeff. Jim, Cheryl, any comments or questions about the letter before we put it to vote?
No, I think I haven't read it for a couple of weeks. So if I recall, you had a lot of technical information in it, if I recall, Beth. Very specific concerns. Yeah, I thought the letter was appropriate. I'm trying to picture it.
Great. What I like the most about the letter is that I think we, in all of our letter writings, I think we're getting some forward motion with the NRC and the Zoning Board of Appeals that Title V is not actually enough. And I think this is going to set the stage for future work that comes in the town of Concord by whomever to actually make some very meaningful change, and might not just be for White Pond, might be for all water areas in the town, that no, you can't just put in a septic system that's going to release nutrients that go downhill. Cheryl, comment from you?
Yeah, I mean, this sort of went to new business, or something that I was supposed to do, whatever, two meetings prior. There was some discussion about why the health department down in Bourne, I think it's Bourne, right? Why was a lawsuit being brought against them? And why the health department was able to go in and look at all the various septic systems. And so I went back and looked at some of the minutes of the select board, and I think the basis, although it's not clear, is that 10 years prior, there actually had been a report stating that septic systems were a big cause of the nutrient loading of the pond. And so that was the basis that allowed the health department to go in and make those, cause them the septic systems to be reevaluated and looked at and all that sort of stuff. So the fact that we have, already articulated in our report, at least, that septic systems are a big cause, and that was backed up by the town's health department, I think is a basis for asking for something more.
Right.
And that might actually be a basis for some charge in the future.
Great. That's a great point, Cheryl. Also, I think it's a basis for asking the Board of Health now to investigate all the septic tanks, something that's been not forthcoming. Thank you, Cheryl, for doing that work. All right. Jeff, last comment? Yeah.
Yeah. So I talked to Alan about this, and he said the reason they are not hooking up with the sewer system from Colebrook is because they maxed out that system.
Yeah.
They actually built as many units as they could for that system. They can't add a single home more.
Yeah. I think that information was shared with the committee as well.
Yeah.
So I'd like to make a motion that we approve Beth's letter as is, that will be sent to the ZBA on behalf of the White Pond Advisory Committee. Is there a second? Second? All right, take a vote.
I second. And Josh, just a clarification for the minutes, it will be sent to the ZBA, who will be forwarding it to Attorney Henchy, because that's who the letter was written to, and Elizabeth sent it to me. Thank you.
Great, thanks for that clarification. Jim, yea or nay?
Just a thought, going forward, this work is going to occur and it's going to have a lot of good ideas, hopefully, of what needs to happen and an order in which it would have happened. I've said it before, but I think at the same time, the town needs to be looking at how do we enforce these things, which may be, so far there's been a reluctance, partly because of law. If it's Title V, it's Title V. But at the same time, there are going to be ideas that will have some controversy and require different behaviors and construction around the pond. And it would be a shame to do all this work and not have that, come to fruition. So just a thought.
Thanks, Jim. Jim, your vote on Beth's letter, yes or no?
Yes, I put my hand up. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. All right, and Jeff, did you vote?
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm a yeah.
Okay, great. So we're unanimous. Beth, will you take the action item of sending your letter to the ZBA to forward to the lawyer Henchley?
I will.
Thank you. All right, so thus approved. I'm just reading through our minutes for this evening. Beth, how much time do we have you for? I know you were on short time tonight.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get off in a few minutes. I was just wondering if I could move one of the agenda items just briefly to, while Mary's on the line, to clarify something about the water quality.
Sure, which agenda item?
I think it's number 5, Josh. We usually have our subgroup reports.
Winds up being number 6, but if you'd like to talk about water quality while we still have you, let's do that.
It's not water quality. Well, it is water quality. Just wanted to let Mary know while we're on the phone, and I will send a letter to Matt as well from the select board. Just so everybody knows, we did receive a letter back from Fish and Game. And the select board did send our abbreviated letter to Fish and Game about not stocking this fall with rainbow trout. And it didn't have all the technical information that the letter we drafted had, which might have given them a little bit more information about, the 2 studies that we referenced. Because the answer was that the studies they had from 2 years ago weren't necessarily saying rainbow trout were involved. So there's 2 things we can do, but I want Mary to understand, when he wrote back, he said, Mary, that White Pond was stocked with rainbow trout in the spring.
Right.
And I wrote a letter to him personally as a resident to Fish and Game and asked if I could get a copy of the spring stocking because it's no longer on the website.
Mhm.
And he wrote me back and he said he would. And then he mentioned also he may have made a mistake reading the line items. So what he sent to select board said we were stocked with rainbow trout. And I
Right.
can tell you personally that we were not. We had Lake and Brown. So the Fish and Game commissioner who we wrote to gave misinformation, not on purpose. I'm not saying that at all, but he said we did get stocked and we did not.
Okay.
I don't think it will matter for this fall, but I'm waiting for him to correct that letter and to the select board for sure. And then I wonder, and this is something you guys can discuss, even though White Pond Advisory Committee is now going to be defunct, should we send a letter with the actual full letter saying, here's the studies, the references, the literature, or not, or is it a moot point? So that's the only thing I wanted to throw out there.
You can certainly send a letter. Not from the White Pond Advisory Committee, obviously, but you can certainly send a letter. And maybe it's from this other, I'm sorry, Josh, what was the name of the other group?
Friends of White Pond. That sounds,
Right.
Beth, like Friends of White Pond business to me.
Okay,
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
and I think it makes it probably more credible to have an organizational name at the end.
totally, totally.
So, right.
Okay.
So, yeah. I
Mary,
mean,
I'll keep you posted. I just wanted you to know, though, that what they wrote back, I didn't consider that a done deal because it was not absolutely correct. So, okay,
Okay.
that's
Yeah,
all I needed to.
it did seem like a brush off kind of, so that's good that you're.
Yeah.
following up. Yeah, good.
And I haven't seen, but my guess is it will be stocked with this, with rainbow this fall. And unfortunately, we know the apods in there, and we know there were rainbow trout, so we don't know what impact that had, but we
Right.
certainly know zooplankton are big and growing this year. So that's all. Thank you. Thanks, Josh. Go ahead.
Tanya Galis, you have a comment, and could you please state your name and your address for the open meeting rules?
Tanya Gala, 62 Prescott Road. Thanks for taking it. It's a question. Are we required to stock the pond to meet any state requirements? I was just wondering about, in general, what stocking ponds may have on a pond's ecology. In general, so I was wondering if that was a requirement or a choice we made in town, or any information. I'm just concerned, that's all. Thank you.
Sure. The short answer is that the state of Massachusetts owns the water. The state of Massachusetts Fish and Game Committee made the decision to stock the pond. They've done so annually for as many years as I think recorded history there is. We strongly understand, based on research, that the rainbow trout that they have stocked the pond with eat zooplankton, which are the chief defense against the cyanobacteria, or the toxic algae blooms. We've written this up. You can find it in the White Pond Vision 2021 on the Town of Concord's website.
Thanks.
All right, anything else about fish stocking? Otherwise, we'll move forward to the next agenda item. Okay, Cheryl, your hand is up. Is there anything else you want to add? Take that as a no. Okay, thanks. Reports from town committee liaisons. This might be moot at this point, but does anyone have anything they'd like to bring to this committee's attention from other town committee meetings? Nope, okay. I've been attending some meetings, but given the state of affairs, I don't think I'll take up people's times with this. Other subcommittee reports, similarly, anything folks want to talk about bloom reporting or sewage or watershed on the town's website? Jim?
I just have a question, because I've heard now a couple of times that there's growing interest within the town regarding adding sewers, and I'm not sure that it pertained to this area or other parts of town. And Mary, maybe you have enough more information on that or something.
Actually, Jim, the only time that I'm hearing sewage be talked about would be for the potential assisted living affordable housing project over next to the prison.
Okay.
And that's where the conversations around increasing sewage capacity for that particular facility and possibly tying into, it's a complicated thing, but that's way over by the Rotary.
Okay, thank you.
Jim, I'd add also, it was mentioned earlier on this call, but I've had a couple run-ins with the positive runs with the middle school committee. And as noted, they are planning to have improved septic nitrogen capture, phosphorus capture in their septic system.
Josh, is that because of the proximity to the Jenny Dugan well?
I don't think it is. I think it's because that's how things ought to be. That's my information that I have.
Yeah, my understanding is that the DEP is really pushing for that to be a state standard on anything and over the next few years.
Interesting if we could talk with people who have background on that, you know, what the system is, how you obtain it.
That's exactly, I have to interject here. I can't help myself. This is exactly what I was hoping the task force would do.
And Mary, so you know, Jim himself actually brought a whole mess of literature to one of our meetings last summer, distributed it. We all have it. It's I don't know if it's in the records because it was just a physical copy.
Okay, but then what happened? But then what happened?
So we worked through the whole sewage team. Jeff and Jim have been working on this for the better part of 6-8 months.
Yeah.
Worked with Alan Cathcart, and the feedback has been basically a shrug of the shoulders. There's not been the drive and interest. And yes, we have gotten stuck there. And it would be great if your task force can move the needle. It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Just a quick summary of what I've heard. We had a couple of meetings with both boards of health, health department directors, probably 3 with Alan. Jeff, I know I've had a couple of phone calls with him. I've talked with Delia, and Board of Health opinion was there's not much we can do. If it's a Title V, we have to approve it. And we can't make the people go to an alternative system, which there are some out there now that take out virtually all of the phosphorus and most of the nitrogen, or I may have it backwards at the moment.
Yeah, right now, nitrogen is what they're best at. But they're-
And
yeah.
that we have no way of enforcing it. Alan talked with us a lot about the proposal back around 2000 to put in sewerage, and it got to town meeting and was voted down for cost reasons. And at one point, there was going to be the plan there was interceptor sewers going up each side of the pond, and then putting a treatment plant in the field, which was objected to by the abutters. And then they went to the school board to try to get some of the land for the new Willard School, and that was rejected as well. So the ideas come up, they get kicked around, and I'm not finding fault with anybody. And for one reason or another, it doesn't move forward. And I think sometimes just people are so darn busy. And other times, oh, we've tried that kind of thing. All very understandable. But maybe a focused organization with strong backing. And I'm not saying that the right way, but a more yeah, I mean, with a clear charge, this is what we need to do. The town's going to stand behind it. And I think my view is when you get into something like this, which is really so critical, big time costs associated with it, there will be lots of resistance to spending that kind of money. It needs to, that topic needs to be carefully integrated with town officials in those various departments, and they almost need to be part of that working group for that specific item, so that it isn't random conversations that may or may not result in anything.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
that's my 2 cents.
Can I add my 2 cents? I think, yeah, Jim and I spent a lot of time on this, and I did a lot of phone calls with people on the Cape. They're pretty far, they're pretty, they're very far along on all this. And basically, any of the new systems aren't that good, especially with phosphorus. And you really need to sewer. And Alan, it's a big step, and we didn't know. At this point we were like, okay, we need to sewer. Anything else is not going to do much for us. I mean, the problem is this pond is we have sand and gravel for our soil, and that once a septic system goes into the dirt, it travels fast, and doesn't matter if you have a new system or whatever. Really, we need to sewer if we're going to clean up the pond. And so that's where we're at. And it was kind of like Alan kind of made it sound like that's a huge step, and so that's where we're at.
Okay, very good. Mary, there is substantial information in the White Pond Advisory Committee minutes on this, as well as the White Pond Vision 2021. Alan Cathcart himself.
I've read this.
Yeah, Alan Cathcart himself is phenomenally brilliant about this stuff. He knows it inside and out.
Yeah.
Very good.
He's excellent. He's excellent.
Yeah. Okay. Any other subcommittee reports or other comments before we get to other business, and then we're going to close ourselves out? Okay. So other business, other topics that people want to bring up here in our what I interpret to be our closing minutes or closing moments for the White Pond Advisory Committee at this time.
I just like to say it's been a pleasure and an honor to work with you with you people on this committee, all 5 of you, 4 of you.
Thanks, Jeff. I feel the same way. I think we got some really good work done. I think our obstacles were pretty enormous and remain very, very large, but I think we really, really got some forward motion. And so congrats to us on that.
I agree. Well done.
All right. So with that, I would like to invite everyone to come join me at Friends of White Pond. I will at this time resign. Goodbye. It's been a pleasure. And see you in the next iteration. We'll close out the meeting at 7:46. Thank you all for your time.
Okay, so the remaining meetings on the calendar will not occur.
No, they won't. One of my next acts
Okay.
right after this is to email the Harvey Wheeler folks with whom we've reserved a room to let them know. And to the meetings at concordma.gov to let them know.
And Chris, you said Chris is already on this meeting. Did I understand that correctly?
He's been on mute. Yeah. Oh, Chris, you there?
So he knows. Good. Okay.
Okay.
Thanks,
Thank you
John.
all.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay, good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye-bye.
Night.